This week, we're taking you to the Himalayan mountains and a conflict born at the end of British rule and the dividing up of the Indian subcontinent into mainly Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan. As the contours were being formed in 1947, the Hindu Maharaja of Kashmir hesitated between which country to link up with. Pakistan attacked, so it was to India that Kashmir turned. Within a few weeks, Pakistani forces were pushed back to a border fixed by the UN. The state was cut in two, and the front line of the ongoing protracted conflict was formed. Well, since then, there have been regular clashes in 1965 and 1971, and almost a nuclear war in 1999. Regular exchanges of fire which have left tens of thousands dead. To that toll must be added the many, many victims of a violent separatist insurrection which has lasted more than 20 years, despite repression by New Delhi. 40 to 100,000 civilians have been killed since 1987 alone. Well, today, peace is slowly returning to Kashmir. With tourists attracted by its large, fertile basin, it's earned the nickname of the Switzerland of India. Mandakini Gelot and Louise Kaminka revisit Srinagar for France 24.
It's the crack of dawn, but for some, the day has already begun. Like his father and grandfather before him, Gulzar Ahmad is the manager of one of the hundreds of houseboats that dot Srinagar's Dal Lake. It's 6 a.m. and he's going to the floating market to stock up on supplies for his guests.
Over the years, economic activity on the lakes increased. For a long time, it was a generational activity. People took over from their fathers and grandfathers, and many new shops also opened here. The floating market, especially the vegetable market, is a source of livelihood for many people here.
Here, one can find everything from groceries to handicrafts and even jewelry. Traders in the floating market rely heavily on tourism, and in the last few years, they've finally been able to breathe more easy.
Hello, I'll take 1 kilo of tomatoes and another kilo of capsicum, please. Some potatoes as well. But less than that, please.
Once famously described as paradise on earth by a Mughal emperor, the valley of Srinagar became a favourite haunt of young British officers during the colonial era. In its heyday in the 70s, hundreds and thousands of travellers from across the globe visited Srinagar. But in 1989, India declared a state of emergency in Kashmir to quell a separatist insurgency, backed in part by Pakistan. Kashmir quickly became a pawn between the two nuclear rivals. To this day, both sides still lay claim to the territory. When 1 million Indian soldiers came marching into the streets, the tourists quickly disappeared.
Back then, you'd hardly see any boats on the lake. All the small operators had packed up their boats and gone back to their villages. When tourism died down, there was nothing to do, and we all lost our jobs. But if there'd been no conflict, then there would have been development, and Kashmir would have been like a small London.
It may not rival London, but today, after a decade of relative calm, the city is undergoing a revival. It's a revival marked by the return of foreign tourists and the arrival of Indian travellers, like this couple from Mumbai, who are spending their holiday on Gulzar's houseboat. Since 2011, over 1 million tourists have been visiting Kashmir each year.
Then I was a bit scared because everybody, my friends, when I spoke to my friends about it, they were like, Kashmir, are you serious?
Kashmir, I couldn't take my family because I never know when the bullets could spray. So then I didn't want to take that risk with my family. So then it always kept me back from Kashmir. Then when I came, I found it awesome.
For Kashmiris like Gulzar, the revival of tourism is a boon. But away from the tourist haven that is Dal Lake, tensions simmer beneath the surface. Over 300,000 Indian soldiers are still deployed in the state. The majority of the population in Kashmir practices a form of moderate Sunni Islam. Every Friday, thousands congregate in mosques which have become centers of political activism. At Hazrat Bal, Kashmir's largest mosque, radical clerics openly preach Kashmiri independence. It's an idea that is unacceptable to the Indian government. Today, like every other Friday, emotions run high after prayer. A clash has broken out between young Kashmiri radicals armed with stones and Indian security forces. Such clashes are common in the city, and sometimes they claim civilian lives. An entire generation of Kashmiris grew up during the insurgency years. Suhail Mir Khadiri, a political cartoonist at a local English language daily, is one of them. He describes the presence of Indian soldiers on Kashmiri soil as an occupation.
Here, I show a Kashmiri with his arms and legs cut off because every time PM Modi visits, we feel like we're paralyzed.
So I think art kahin na kahin ek tool hai jo resist karne ke
I
liye
think
hai.
art is a tool of resistance, of change. For me, it's an important medium, an opportunity to depict our problems.
जो हमारी जो problems हैं उसको दिखाने के लिए.
I want people outside Kashmir who are not familiar with the conflict to be able to see our pain and our suffering.
हमारा जो भी suffering है वो देखे, pain है वो देखे.
Suhail, like many young Kashmiris, is a vocal supporter of Kashmiri independence. His bold cartoons are often republished by international publications.
Hello, sir. I'd like to discuss some ideas before I start drawing today's cartoon.
But sometimes his editor has to step in to moderate some of his more extreme views.
Our young generation, the generation next, which we call, I mean, they are in a way, I won't say radicalized, but in their opinion, they are in a way radicalized. I mean, they take extreme, positions.
It's a luxury the previous generation did not enjoy. Back then, most Kashmiris were too afraid to express their views openly.
And that time it was difficult. Once you would go out of, say, Srinagar, out of city, it was difficult to keep track of the person and whether he's alive or not. And we would just keep the address label in our pocket so that if you are no more, at least you are identified and your body is going to your place. At least you don't die an unknown death.
The next day, Suhail invites us to meet his friend. Together, they run Crafted in Kashmir, a business that has radically changed the age-old Kashmiri shawl by contemporizing the motifs.
My mother had some pashminas. Like this, these are some very traditional motifs that you'll have on shawls, like these little paisleys and these, In our motifs, we've kind of gone away from the more traditional, the more conventional motifs of beauty, like the paisleys, and we've ventured a little more into ugliness. This is like a literal scene almost, Sometimes you'll just be walking around and you will see this. There's like a little flower that's stuck in a barbed wire.
Skulls, weapons, and barbed wires are familiar objects for those who grew up in Kashmir during those years of political uncertainty. The picture-perfect postcard image of Kashmir is not their reality.
challenging the accepted narrative of what Kashmir is about and what Kashmiris are about is now been taken really seriously by young Kashmiris. You know, you're not going to tell us what happened to us. We are going to tell you what happened to us. And we are going to be the tellers of our story.
They have combined their modern motifs with old-fashioned handmade manufacturing techniques.
We are in Kanihama. Traditionally, it has been a major center for weaving pashminas. That's why the place is called Kanihama, because in Kashmiri, the word for pashminas is kani.
For centuries, the pashmina shawl has been a source of income for artisans, spinners, and weavers across the valley. Each shawl takes 3 to 4 months to make. But with the introduction of mechanized looms and spinning machines, only a handful of traditional weavers remain in Kashmir.
He made our shawls. He's a great artist, very skilled and very young. He's just 24 years old.
He's a 24.
Persuading the weavers to go back to the basics wasn't easy. Neither was getting them to accept unconventional and untested motifs.
The designs are very strange, with skulls and barbed wires. When they first came, I asked them, why are we making these strange motives? And they explained that the situation is bad in Kashmir, that this is our reality. I have personally seen these objects near army camps many times, but I told them nobody will wear these in Kashmir. Nobody wants to remember.
As young Kashmiris strive to etch a better future for themselves, there are others who want to return to the past before the troubles began. Like Bhushan Lal Mattu, who returned to Kashmir 2 years ago when he turned 60.
The place we're going to, I was born there. It's where I grew up. It's where I'm from, and it's always in my thoughts and my dreams.
Mattu is a Kashmiri Pandit, part of a small Hindu minority that once made up 5% of the entire population. In the 1990s, during an armed uprising of Muslim separatists, targeted attacks were launched against the Pandit community. Officially, 219 Hindus were killed, but activists estimate the actual number was 3 times higher. Through those years, 200,000 Pandits, nearly the entire population, fled the valley. Mattu left with his wife and 2 children.
This was my house. At the time, there were absolute crackdowns. The streets were filled with army and militants. They'd force us to close our shops and pull us out of our homes. They'd make us stand in line for hours, go for identification parades. It was really bad.
25 years later, Mattu was able to come back to the city thanks to a policy launched by India's Hindu nationalist government to bring Hindus back to the Muslim majority state. Under the scheme, each family that chooses to return gets nearly 30,000 euros and a government job. Mattu is one of the few Pandits to come back and is urging others from his community to do the same.
I want to tell my Hindu brothers that things are better now. The situation they witnessed has changed. The Muslims have seen problems too. They suffered as well. And now we all want to forget. They're happy to live with us today.
Tonight, there's a curfew in Srinagar, a common occurrence in the city. But this particular one coincides with Diwali, the biggest Hindu festival of the year.
Nobody can be happier than me today to celebrate this auspicious festival freely in our beloved Kashmir. But I'm also a little upset about this curfew. I was expecting many friends and guests to come here today. But now they can't. They're all feeling really bad that they can't even come to celebrate with my family.
कम से कम आज हम वहाँ नहीं पहुँचे.
As they celebrate the Festival of Lights, they pray for peace in their fragile homeland. Many Western nations continue to issue cautious travel advisories to their citizens traveling to Kashmir. But 25 years after the valley was seized by a violent insurgency, Srinagar has finally begun the process of healing.
Mandakini Gallot and Louise Kaminka revisiting Srinagar for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition, but you can catch it again and all the previous editions on our website. That's at france24.com. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more.